What if Adam wasn't the first? What if the Garden of Eden was not the pristine, perfect beginning, but the carefully orchestrated aftermath of something truly catastrophic and universe-shattering? And what if the Bible, the sacred foundational text you thought you knew, is still concealing a cosmic secret of unimaginable power hidden in its very first line, a secret that challenges the very foundation of creation and human history? Genesis 1 verse 1 declares the definitive act. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. It is a statement of perfect, powerful, complete design. But then, the very next verse doesn't offer a progression. It delivers a description of ruin. It says, "But the earth was without form and void, and darkness was over the face of the deep." That is not the description of a creation actively taking shape. It is the chilling portrait of a catastrophic conclusion. The Hebrew term used here is Tohu va-Bohu, or Tohu va-Bohu, a phrase that reverberates with judgment. It is used elsewhere in Scripture exclusively to describe the desolation and chaos wrought by divine judgment. This is not a raw creative blank slate, as many modern translations soften it, stripping it of its raw power. The word Tohu specifically implies desolation, futility, or a wasteland. It is the desolate state of something violently undone, a world reduced to dust and shadow, a cosmos rendered null and void. So here is the unspoken cosmic question few dare to ask, the question that unlocks the true mystery of Genesis. What was judged so severely before Adam was even formed? The book of Job, chapter 38, offers an immensely profound clue, describing the moment God laid the foundations of the earth. It states, "The morning stars sang together and all the sons of God shouted for joy." But hold that thought. Adam, the supposed first man, the beginning of human life, was not yet created. He was not present at that celestial ceremony. So, who were these radiant ancient beings? Who were these sons of God, B'nai Elohim, these heavenly hosts, and what immense pre-Adamic cosmic event were they witnessing with such profound jubilation? Their very presence at the earth's founding proves that the universe was populated with conscious, high-level spiritual entities long before Genesis 2. The evidence suggests a terrifying yet logically sound possibility, a civilization that predates Adam's world, a cosmic order that collapsed, and a war fought in the heavens that spilled its devastation onto the physical earth, leaving it in the state of Tohu va-Bohu. What if the serpent in the garden was not a mere intrusive creature, but a powerful, highly intelligent survivor of that ancient war, an exile sent from the ruins of a previous dominion? This is the forgotten, erased history, the beginning before the recognized beginning. It all hinges not on the perfection of Genesis 1 verse 1, but on the immense, terrifying chasm of time and ruin that exists between the first two verses, a silent space where something divine and glorious fell, and an entire ancient world died. Welcome to Godwin's Scrolls, where we don't just read the scriptures, we unlock them like sealed scrolls, revealing the convergence of forgotten history, prophetic mystery, and high-level divine revelation. If you've ever sensed that there are deeper, more dangerous truths beneath the familiar pages, you are correct. They are there, and we are now going to excavate them. Before we continue, if this is your first time here, subscribe, like, comment, and share this video. Now let us continue. The gap in Genesis, the core of the mystery. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The rhythm of perfection is shattered by the very next sentence. And the earth was without form and void. This profound linguistic and theological disconnect is not accidental. It is a signal of a hidden history. What happened in that dark, unrecorded pause between verse 1 and verse 2? In the original Masoretic Hebrew text, the precise linguistic construction of Genesis 1 verse 2 strongly supports the translation, V'haaretz hayta tohu va-Bohu, which can powerfully and truthfully be read as, and the earth became formless and void. The verb hayta implies a change in state from a prior condition. The phrase Tohu va-Bohu doesn't describe the raw potential of a blank canvas. It describes the devastating ruins of a destroyed structure. Its usage across the Old Testament is consistent and terrifying, marking scenes of absolute divine judgment and desolation. Isaiah 34 uses it to describe a land that has suffered the full, desolating wrath of the Lord. Jeremiah 4 applies it to a city, Judah, that has been violently judged and reduced to nothingness, a chaos that signifies divine displeasure. Tohu va-Bohu is the language of desolation, not the language of creation's genesis. The real, profound question then shifts its focus. Not what did God create in Genesis 1 verse 1, but what was the catastrophic source of the devastation that left his perfect initial creation in utter ruin. This is the heart of the gap theory, championed by an increasing number of Jewish mystics, ancient commentators, and modern theologians. They propose that between the initial perfect creation, Gen 1:1, and the re-establishment of the world for Adam, Gen 1:3, there existed a cosmic epoch, a time before Adam, a fully formed world that was then judged and reduced to chaos. God, as affirmed in 1 Corinthians 14 verse 33, is not the author of confusion or disorder. He doesn't begin a perfect work with darkness and void. He judges and restores chaos into order. The initial perfection was ruined, and the 6 days of Genesis 1 verse 3 onward describe the recreation and re-establishment of that ruined world. This opens the uncomfortable yet biblically supported possibility. Genesis does not start with a pure beginning, but with a divine aftermath, the silent, buried consequence of an ancient rebellion and a forgotten cosmic war. Ancient Jewish midrashic texts strongly support this idea of temporal succession, claiming that God created multiple worlds or successive ages before establishing this one, and destroyed them because they became corrupted by rebellious spiritual entities who sought to establish their own dominion. The chaos of Genesis 1 verse 2 is thus transformed from a simple blank slate into the ruins of a previous, magnificent, and ultimately fallen creation. The early church fathers, notably Origen and Augustine, speculated that this destruction was the direct result of the fall of Lucifer, the original high-level insurrection in heaven that shattered the celestial order and whose devastating shockwave ripped through the visible cosmos, darkening the earth and creating the very Tohu va-Bohu we read about. Ezekiel 28 speaks of a glorious being, the anointed guardian cherub, who was in Eden, the garden of God, blameless until wickedness was found in you. How could this angelic being be in Eden before the man Adam was created? The narrative shatters the common timeline unless the first, celestial Eden predates the terrestrial one, unless the fall of this angelic prince precedes and explains the chaos Adam was placed into. If this is true, then Adam was not the absolute beginning of creation. He was the strategic, divine restart. He was not placed into an empty world, but planted in the ashes of a judged one. The sons of God and the Watcher's betrayal. We must return to the sons of God, B'nai Ha-Elohim, who sang at the earth's original foundation. Who were they, and what was their function in that pre-Adamic world? These sons of God were not metaphors for human kings or righteous men. The term used in Job, Psalms, and Genesis 6 refers explicitly to high-level non-human entities, angels, heavenly stewards, beings of immense radiance and authority. They were present at the earth's creation, Job 38, and their corruption led to its near destruction, Genesis 6. This defines their role as cosmic architects or administrators entrusted with the care of the early world. But some did not remain loyal. The ancient book of Enoch, a text esteemed and quoted by early Jews and specifically referenced in the New Testament, Jude 1 verse 6, tells the terrifying story of a faction called the Watchers. Originally, they were indeed part of the B'nai Ha-Elohim, sent to observe and safeguard the order of the newly re-established earth. They were trusted sentinels, but something changed. Enoch names them. 200 of them, led by a chief named Shemchaza, descended onto Mount Hermon, a place name that literally means curse or consecration in Hebrew. There, they violated the divine cosmic boundary. They saw the daughters of men, and they were consumed by a forbidden desire. They bound themselves by an oath and took human women as wives, effectively crossing and corrupting the divine and the human. But their betrayal was more than lust. They taught humanity forbidden knowledge that was never meant for mortals. The forbidden arts they imparted included metallurgy and the crafting of deadly weapons, sorcery, enchantments, and the cutting of roots for magical power, the revelation of celestial mysteries, astronomy, and the signs of the earth, and most terrifyingly, the secret of abortion and the striking of the embryo. This was not progress. It was the deliberate introduction of occult and destructive knowledge meant to accelerate human corruption and rebellion against the Creator's order. From this monstrous, unnatural union came the Nephilim. They were not angel, not man, but terrifying, powerful hybrids, creatures of immense size and violence, born from rebellion, shaped by violation, and armed with stolen knowledge. They were not myth. They were rebels with heaven's DNA. The Watchers' fall was not just moral, it was cosmic. They abandoned their posts of guardianship, and their act of betrayal may have been the very trigger that accelerated the devastation of Adam's world toward the deluge. Their fall was so catastrophic that God later imprisoned them in the abyss, bound in chains and gloomy darkness until the judgment of the great day, Jude 1 verse 6. But some scholars believe that traces of their forbidden influence, ancient structures, forgotten technologies, relics of the pre-Adamic war, still linger in the hidden corners of the earth. If that is true, then Adam was placed not into an empty world, but into one already haunted by the ghosts of divine betrayers. The Nephilim invasion and the genetic safeguard. There were giants in the earth in those days and also afterward. Genesis 6 verse 4. The Bible calls them Nephilim. This word comes from the Hebrew root naphal, meaning to fall or to be cast down. They are literally the fallen ones. Not fallen like angels, but fallen like hybrids born from a direct assault on the purity of creation. The Nephilim were the monstrous offspring of the Watchers, the rogue sons of God who shattered the divine human boundary. Their existence was not accidental. It was an intentional genetic corruption, a direct assault on the plan to redeem humanity. These beings were giants. Physically imposing, yes, but far more dangerously, they were predatory, violent, and a pure form of pollution in flesh. Genesis 6 verse 11 says, "The earth was filled with violence." But the Hebrew word used for violence, chaos, implies more than simple fighting. It speaks of lawlessness, chaos, brutality, and violation. These giants didn't just threaten human civilization. They threatened God's plan of salvation itself. In the beginning, God said, "Let us make man in our image." But what happens when that image is genetically hijacked? The Nephilim were a direct assault on the purity of humanity. They defiled bloodlines, erased the critical boundaries between the orders of creation, and infected the human genome with something that could not be redeemed. This is the terrifying realization. Noah wasn't just righteous, he was genetically untouched. Genesis 6 verse 9 describes Noah as perfect in his generations. The Hebrew word is tamim, the same word used for a spotless, unblemished sacrificial lamb. This is not simply a description of Noah's moral character. It is a terrifying guarantee of his genetic purity. Noah's lineage had not been corrupted by Nephilim influence. He was the last true, pure man, the last uncorrupted vessel through whom God could continue his covenant. And so God made a decision, a terrifying cosmic decision: I will wipe mankind from the face of the earth. The flood wasn't just about punishment or sin, it was about resetting the human genome. The world had become something unrecognizable, a hybrid landscape ruled by abominations. The ark wasn't just a boat, it was a genetic safeguard, a womb floating on the waters of divine wrath. Every creature taken aboard was selected with purpose. Every lineage untainted, every breath preserved for restoration. The Nephilim were wiped away. Or were they? Genesis 6 verse 4 whispers something chilling. And also afterward, the Nephilim returned. The corruption survived. The war wasn't over. That raises a haunting question. What else survived the flood, hidden, waiting, and returning? The flood was a divine reset to save what remained purely human. Lost civilizations and the echoes of the pre-Adamic world. What has been will be again. What has been done will be done again. There is nothing new under the sun. Ecclesiastes 1 verse 9. We tend to think we are the absolute peak of human achievement, that modern civilization is the most advanced version of mankind. But what if we're not the first? What if we're the rebuild, constructed on top of someone else's ruins? Around the world, stories echo from the dust of forgotten time, from the pre-Adamic age. Ancient Egypt tells of a golden age ruled by gods before pharaohs. The Sumerians wrote of kings reigning for thousands of years before a catastrophic flood. Mayan glyphs speak of civilizations destroyed by divine fire and water. And then there's Atlantis. Plato described it not as a fantasy, but as a technologically advanced, power-hungry empire swallowed by the sea in a single day and night. Fantasy or fragments of a collective, traumatized memory? Every myth begins with a memory. Let's look at the physical evidence, the architecture. How do you explain the megalithic structures that defy modern time and logic? The Great Pyramid of Giza, aligned perfectly with the stars, built with mathematical precision modern engineers still marvel at. Baalbek, Lebanon, home to colossal, smoothly cut stones weighing over 1,000 tons, moved without any modern machinery. Göbekli Tepe, a site older than any known civilization, with finely carved structures no hunter-gatherer society should have been capable of building. These are not scattered anomalies. They are the scattered bones of something older and infinitely greater. The Bible doesn't detail these civilizations, but it does whisper their traces. Genesis 6:4's phrase, "and also afterward," is the key to persistence. It suggests survival, a remnant of that hybrid world carried through the flood and embedded into the post-Diluvian memory. What we call mythology may be the traumatized recollections of survivors, stories reshaped over centuries into tales of gods, titans, and monsters. But maybe they weren't gods. Maybe they were the Nephilim, towering, powerful remnants of the corrupted bloodline, who were worshipped by men too afraid to resist. And maybe their technology wasn't magic, but forbidden knowledge passed down from the Watchers. The Book of Enoch says they taught men metallurgy, weaponry, enchantments, and astronomy, things far beyond the age of stone. And what about Eden? If these ancient ruins are echoes of pre-flood and even pre-Adamic brilliance, then where is Eden in all of this? Could the longing in every ancient myth for a lost paradise be a fractured memory of the garden mankind was cast out from? And if so, we must ask, did God bury Eden or did he protect it? Is it hidden from history or hidden from the unholy? Lucifer's ruined kingdom, the origin of the curse. Before Adam ever opened his eyes, before Eden bloomed, before the serpent slithered through the trees, he, the archangel of light, had already fallen. How you are fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning. Isaiah 14 verse 12. Lucifer's fall was not a garden story. It was a celestial high-level rebellion, a cosmic insurrection that shattered the harmony of heaven itself. He was once glorious. Ezekiel 28 paints the portrait. You were the seal of perfection, full of wisdom and perfect in beauty. You were in Eden, the garden of God. You were anointed as a guardian cherub. But the Eden mentioned here is not the terrestrial Eden of Adam. This is a heavenly Eden, the throne space of God, a realm of radiant stones and burning holiness. Lucifer wasn't created evil. He was majestic, exalted, a worship leader among the heavenly host. But pride, the deadliest sin, fermented in his heart. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will make myself like the Most High. He didn't want to serve, he wanted to seize and rule. And so war broke out in the highest heaven. The serpent didn't sneak into the garden. He was in exile, cast down to the earth with fury, bringing with him a third of the stars, a third of the angelic host. Woe to the earth and the sea because the devil has gone down to you. Earth was not his target. Earth became his prison and his final battlefield. Here is the twist that connects Lucifer's fall to the Genesis gap. Many scholars and ancient commentators believe that Lucifer ruled a kingdom before Adam. A pre-Adamic world over which he had been granted dominion until his rebellion corrupted it entirely and brought divine judgment. This perfectly aligns with the mysterious chaos of Genesis 1 verse 2. The earth became formless and void. If Lucifer was cast down before man was made, what did he fall into? It is proposed that the chaotic wasteland of Genesis 1 verse 2 was the shattered, judged remains of Lucifer's failed dominion. A celestial kingdom reduced to rubble, a throne buried in darkness. This explains why the serpent had such confidence, such cunning, such ancient knowledge. He wasn't guessing. He knew what was at stake because he had once held the power. He had stood near God's throne. Now he slithered near man's. Lucifer's goal wasn't just to deceive Adam and Eve. It was to reclaim access to what he lost through the very creatures made in the image of the one who cast him down. Every temptation in Eden was calculated retaliation. The earth had been cursed by him, and his only path back to power was through the corruption of the new custodian. The question now becomes, was Adam placed in Eden to rule the earth? Or to finish the war Lucifer started? Adam, not the first but the countermeasure. Then the Lord God formed the man of dust from the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life. Genesis 2 verse 7. The image is intimate, sacred. God shaping man from the dust with his own hands. But pause and ask, what kind of dust was it? Clean? Pure? Untouched? No. The dust came from an earth that had already seen darkness, an earth that had already been judged into Tohu va-Bohu. Genesis 3 verse 17 tells us plainly, cursed is the ground because of you. But could it be that the curse was not introduced in Genesis 3, but simply revealed, that the very ground Adam was formed from had already tasted rebellion? Adam wasn't shaped in a sterile, empty world. He was born into the aftermath of something ancient and divine. He wasn't merely the first human being. He was the first chosen one, the first steward of the re-established order. Romans 5 verse 14 calls Adam a type of the one to come, a shadow, a forerunner, not the beginning but the preview of ultimate redemption. God didn't start over with Adam, he started a rescue operation. Everything about Adam's creation is different. Unlike other creatures who were called into being with words, Adam was shaped, breathed into, and intimately touched by the Creator. Why? Because Adam wasn't just meant to exist. He was meant to carry the divine purpose, to bear the image of God in a realm that had been violated by false thrones and fallen angels. Adam was divine strategy shaped into dust. A new, uncorrupted, and spirit-filled line. He was placed in Eden, a sacred garden, yes, but also a boundary line between heaven's perfect order and the echoes of a ruined world. He was given dominion not over chaos but over restoration. His assignment was not just stewardship, it was spiritual occupation. To multiply, to govern, and to guard from what had already fallen, from who had already been cast down. But he failed. The serpent deceived. The man ate. And once again the plan was violently interrupted. Yet God did not abandon the plan because Adam was not the final goal. He was the first stone in a foundation that pointed forward to a second Adam, a better Adam, an incorruptible one. The first man Adam became a living being. The last Adam became a life-giving spirit. Christ. The last Adam, the final victory. The first man Adam became a living being. The last Adam became a life-giving spirit. 1 Corinthians 15 verse 45. Adam was the beginning of mankind, but he wasn't the end of the story. His failure introduced death. But death would not have the final word. Where Adam fell, Christ would stand. The Bible doesn't call Jesus a second Adam. It calls him the last Adam. Why? Because he wouldn't just repeat the pattern. He came to close it. To redeem not only what Adam lost in Eden, but what creation lost before Eden ever bloomed. Jesus came into a world still reeling from a cosmic fracture, where the echoes of the Nephilim, the Watchers, and the serpent still infected the air. He came not only for men but for the entire creation groaning to be set free. What Adam failed to guard, Christ came to reclaim. He didn't just come to save souls. He came to reclaim the garden, to restore the dominion that once existed between God and man. And even more, to restore creation to its intended destiny. In Eden, a sword turned in every direction, blocking man's path to the tree of life. But at Calvary, that sword pierced the side of the Son of God, and the veil was torn. Access was restored. Christ didn't just defeat death. He reversed the catastrophic consequences of both the pre-Adamic and Adamic falls. He wasn't simply a better man. He was the culmination of the entire redemptive blueprint, reaching all the way back through Adam, through Noah, through Abraham, even beyond Genesis 1 verse 2. His victory was cosmic. It wasn't just about forgiveness. It was about authority. The one who walked with Adam in the cool of the day is the same one who will reign over the new heavens and new earth. Christ did not just restore what we lost. He restored what we never even knew we had. The last Adam became the firstborn of a new creation, a people born not of the earth but of the Spirit. The forgotten war. You were not born into peacetime. You were born into the final, decisive chapter of a cosmic war. The conflict that began with Lucifer's rebellion before Adam, the chaos that destroyed a pre-Adamic world, and the corruption spread by the Watchers. It has never truly ended. It is still raging, and your life is the current high-stakes battlefield. This is the most profound war in existence. It is not reported on, but it is eternal, intelligent, and focused on dismantling God's image within you. Ephesians 6 warns us, "For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against rulers, against authorities, against the cosmic powers over this present darkness." The enemy is ancient, remembers Eden, and fears the victory of the last Adam. The cross secured the victory. The church, the body of Christ, is the military arm that enforces that victory on earth. We are not passive observers. You are a co-heir, a commissioned warrior in a kingdom that is perpetually advancing against the ruins of the old world. You are not here by accident. You were born into a story older than time and written by the very breath of God. From Genesis to Revelation, the Bible is not a book of gentle parables. It is the unchanging chronicle of a war for worship, a war for dominion, and ultimately, a war for the destiny of your spirit and soul, made in the divine image. While the physical, terrestrial Eden has been lost to human sight, its eternal prototype has not been lost to God. The tree of life still stands, no longer in a garden, but in the New Jerusalem, a city descending from the heavens. Revelation 22 promises, "Blessed are those who wash their robes that they may have the right to the tree of life." That right is extended to you through Christ. You are not too late. The chaos and scars you carry are the very proof of the ancient war you were born into. But Eden was never a reward for the perfect. It was a dwelling place for the willing. God erased a world, the pre-Adamic, to write the story of yours. You are the object of Christ's cosmic redemption. The question now is not what happened before Adam, but what story will you align your life with? Will you choose the ruins of the fallen world, or the eternal restoration offered by the last Adam? You are not just a reader of this story. You are being written into the final, triumphant chapter. You were not created for chaos. You were chosen for restoration. The war that began in heaven and raged through history is now being written in your life. So choose salvation. Not because time is short, but because your life is sacred. The same voice that called Adam from the dust now calls you into destiny. You are not too late. If you're still breathing, you're still part of the final act of the most ancient war in creation. What do you think about this video? What are your suggestions, ideas, and narratives? Subscribe, like, share, and comment on this video. Hope to see you in the next video.